Uncover the incredible journey, 5 transformative stories that will inspire you to never give up. The attic was dimly lit, the air thick with the musk of forgotten memories. As Sarah rummaged through the dusty boxes, her heart sank with each discarded trinket. A wave of panic gripped her. What if she never found anything worth keeping? But then her fingers brushed against something cold and metallic. She pulled out an old toolbox, the wooden casing worn but sturdy. Inside, wooden patterns and sawdust-covered tools illuminated her childhood. Memories of her father flooded back. His laughter, his passion carving magic from timber. The echoes of his words about hard work haunted her now, reminding her of the pathway she had strayed from. Could she carve out a better future for her children? With newfound resolve, she took the tools to her garage, but each creak of the door felt ominous. The dust swirling around her like doubt, the weight of her past pressing down on her shoulders. Could she really create something from nothing? As the first piece emerged, a rustic bench, she felt a flicker of excitement, a light at the end of a tunnel buried under layers of financial strain. But as she shared her work online, a harsh reality slammed into her. Skepticism filled the comments. What does she know about woodworking? And a woman shouldn't be in that space. Each word cut deeper than the last, ringing with the judgment of a small-town mindset. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. As the town began to buzz with curiosity over her creations, jealousy flared within her rival craftsman. She felt his eyes on her, tracing each piece she unveiled. Her heart raced as she noticed the whispering behind her back. Her mentor, someone she trusted deeply, began to pull away, sowing seeds of doubt about her capabilities. What if she had relied too heavily on someone who didn't believe in her? Desperation grew, an all-consuming worry that threatened to overshadow all her progress. Then came the moment everyone anticipated, her uniquely designed table, a labor of love that symbolized resilience. The night of the showcase loomed near, a storm of anxiety in her chest. Should she expose her heart to criticism, knowing how easily betrayal had crept into her life? The internal struggle twisted inside her, making her stomach knot. Now stood 3 women, herself, her children, and the legacy of her father. Were they worth the risk? Could love triumph over fear? The crowd murmured, and Sarah felt the weight of their stares, some curious, others vindictive. What would she say? The words formulated in her racing mind, yet the doubt clawed at her throat. She was at a crossroads, where dreams hung by a thread, pressed under the weight of those who disbelieved in her. Every minute stretched eternally as she faced the room, aware that this was her moment, or the end of her fragile aspiration. Would fear silence her, or would she finally lay bare her truth, a testament to every woman who had ever stood against the current? As Sarah stood before the assembled crowd, the unease manifesting in her chest threatened to overwhelm her. Each face in the audience felt like a judgment, a scrutiny that delved far beyond the surface. What if she spoke and faltered? The thought was suffocating, but a deeper truth began to flicker within her, a small flame of defiance. Rejecting the fear, she reminded herself why she'd taken up her father's tools in the first place. The legacy he left behind wasn't just about woodworking. It was about the courage to create something meaningful despite the odds. As the murmur settled, she inhaled deeply, letting the air fill her lungs with the sweet scent of sawdust and varnish that evoked her father's workshop. It grounded her, pulling her thoughts into a singular focus. This was her moment to reclaim her narrative. With a steadying breath, she stepped forward, the worn leather of her apron tight against her chest. "Thank you all for coming tonight," she began, her voice steadier than she felt. "This table represents my journey, filled with struggles, doubts, but ultimately passion." With each word she spoke, she found her rhythm, the energy of her resolve pulsing through the room. Sharing her story transformed the weight of their judgment into a backdrop for her truth. She spoke of the late nights in the garage where she learned not only to create, but also to believe in her abilities. She described the harsh comments she encountered online, opening herself to the vulnerability of rejection. But then she shared the thrill she felt when someone saw her craftsmanship and responded with warmth and encouragement. Those moments, she explained, were the lifeblood of her journey, infusing her with purpose. But the stakes were higher than ever. In the back of her mind loomed the rival craftsman whose sneers haunted her steps. Every challenging gaze from him stoked the fire of competition, yet it also galvanized her spirit, fueling her desire to prove that she belonged in this space. As her voice highlighted the struggle she faced, she realized the confrontation she was seeking was not just with him, but with her own self-doubt. As she finished her presentation, she could feel the tide shift. The murmurs turned into nods of understanding, eyes softened with recognition of her struggle. But just as she prepared to step off the stage, she caught a glimpse of her rival's smirk. It was a reminder that the fight wasn't over. With a twist of anxiety and exhilaration, she resolved to prove him wrong, not just to him, but for her children and the legacy she aimed to forge. Exuding newfound courage, she refused to let fear anchor her. Sure, there would be more battles ahead, more skeptics willing to doubt her, but she wouldn't let their limitations define her journey. This is only the beginning, she concluded, embracing the inevitable messiness of growth. As the applause washed over her, warm and invigorating, Sarah felt a surge of clarity. She needed to dig deeper into her craft, to explore every possibility her father's tools offered. But beneath the thrill of potential success simmered a discomforting query. What sacrifices would she have to make in the pursuit of her dreams? And just as the thought began to settle, a familiar voice cut through the applause, a challenge hidden in the murmurings. "Let's see what you really can do, Sarah. This is just a parade, after all." The words ignited another storm inside her. Was she prepared to dismantle the very insecurities she had only begun to confront? The next chapter of her journey was not just about creation. It was about confronting the critics in her life, both within herself and outside of her garage. Would she rise to the occasion, or would doubt cloud the path ahead? The echoes of applause faded, but the challenge rang clearly in Sarah's mind. The eyes of her audience had transitioned from skepticism to admiration, yet the sneer of her rival hovered like a specter. She felt it gnawing at her resolve. Each compliment she received felt dwarfed by the implications of his words. "Just a parade," he had said, as if dismissing her moment as mere performance. Back at home, the weight of her triumph mingled with uncertainty. She stood in her garage, the dim light illuminating dust motes dancing lazily in the air. Surrounded by her father's tools, each one an extension of her aspirations, Sarah's heart raced. She wanted to reshape her craft, imbue it with something raw yet refined. But how? Determined, she pulled her father's old workbench closer, brushing her fingers over its edges. This was her safe haven, where she molded wood with care and intention. But those moments of creation now seemed tainted by the notion that the work would never be enough. Authenticity weighed heavy. She questioned whether mere craftsmanship could shield her from the lurking doubts, the critical voices, both internal and external. The following day, she lingered over sketches in her notebook, her mind swirling with ideas for a new piece. Each stroke of her pencil felt like a confrontation with her potential, a declaration of independence from her rival's mockery. But with every line, anxiety crept in, a nagging voice insisting that she wouldn't measure up. Questions flooded her mind. What if this new project fell flat? What if she unleashed a creation that became a target for jeers instead of applause? Trial after trial, she found herself stumbling upon moments of inspiration. One afternoon, while shaping a block of walnut, a small idea sparked within her. She envisioned a table that wasn't merely functional, but a testament to resilience, every joint symbolizing the strength that came from struggle. With newfound clarity, Sarah chose to transform her anxiety into artistry. She pushed through the discomfort each day brought, focusing instead on growth and innovation. Layering textures, experimenting with organic shapes, she immersed herself in her craft. Every day became a dedication, reevaluating not just her skills, but the essence of what she could convey through her work. But it wasn't without hurdles. The moment she believed she could break free from the confines of her self-doubt, a new challenge emerged. A workshop competition loomed in the distance, offering not just an opportunity for recognition, but a platform that her rival would undoubtedly enter. Was she prepared to expose herself to yet another wave of judgment? This time, the stakes felt more personal, the scrutiny more intense. As days passed, she wrestled with herself, torn between the fear of failure and the fierce resolve to confront her doubts. Sarah thought back to her presentation. She had shared her struggles publicly, but would she have the courage to stand on that stage again, this time in front of her critics, both seen and unseen? Contemplation turned into action. With each passing moment, she began to sketch out not just a design, but a strategy on how to approach the competition. A deeper understanding washed over her. This wasn't about winning or losing. It was about affirming her identity as a creator, as a person worthy of respect in her craft. She was ready to redefine what legacy meant, not just for her father's memory, but for herself. Little did she know that her journey would force her to confront the true nature of failure and success, further unveiling the depths of her potential. Standing at a crossroad, Sarah clenched her jaw, determination tightening around her like the grip of her tools. She was finally prepared to face down her rival, not just through her craft, but in her heart. The time had come to step into the ring. Would she emerge as the artist she aspired to be, or would the shadows of doubt once more obscure her path? The scent of freshly sanded wood filled the garage, mingling with the faint aroma of lingering sawdust. Sarah stepped back, surveying her creation. The outline of her table now lay partially assembled, but each joint was not just a connection of materials, it was a narrative woven from the threads of her struggle. As she inspected the curves and angles, a wave of self-doubt swept through her. How would it be received? Would it resonate beyond the wood itself? The specter of her rival's dismissive comment reappeared, echoing in her mind like an unwelcome guest. Just a parade. The simplicity of his words burrowed deep, twisting her confidence into knots. Yet, as she gripped the tools, she recognized a pivotal moment, a crossing over towards authenticity. It was time to transform this personal battle into something beyond herself. The competition loomed closer, the date etched into her mind like a countdown. Each stroke of her sander echoed in rhythm with her racing heart, the sound a constant reminder of her dual focus, craftsmanship and personal growth. Sarah reminded herself that she was not there to merely create another object. She was sculpting her identity with every deliberate movement of her hands. That evening, she felt the weight pressing her chest as she tapped her pencil against the side of her sketchbook. The designs morphed and evolved, each iteration reflecting not only her technical skills, but also her emotional landscape. The table would tell the story of a woman breaking free from the chains of judgment. Each imperfection would celebrate her perseverance. Still, a nagging apprehension lingered in the background, poised to rear its head at the most inconvenient moments. What if she failed to articulate this transformation? What if her pieces lacked the resonance she desperately sought? She grappled internally with the dichotomy of her journey. On one hand, the empowering self-affirmation she wished to embrace, juxtaposed against the heights of vulnerability that exposing her art would require. As the days melted together, Sarah started viewing her garage as more than a workspace. It became a sanctuary of reflection. Late one night, after hours of sanding and refining, Sarah strayed from her routine and simply sat in silence, the moonlight filtering through the windows. She took a deep breath, shutting her eyes and allowing the hum of the world to settle around her. In the stillness, clarity emerged. She needed to strip away layers of expectation and preconceived notions. What if success wasn't defined by accolades or validation from others? What if it was about the act of creation itself? Shifting her perspective ignited a spark within, nudging her toward an acceptance of her unique voice. Motivated more than ever, Sarah hurried back to the workbench. Her heart beat in tandem with her hands, crafting new connections in both wood and her spirit. Rituals took form. She established a routine that balanced intuition and discipline. As she embedded her thoughts, frustrations, triumphs, and self-doubt into her pieces, she felt an evolution surging within her. The act of creating became a meditation, a narrative of sorts, bridging her past and her aspirations. But the anticipation of the competition loomed ever larger, the pressure palpable. It wasn't as simple as just presenting her work. It was a declaration of who she was becoming, an examination that eluded the usual confines of artistry. The night before, she lay in bed and battled tangled thoughts. This was it, a confrontation not only with her rival, but with every doubting whisper that had ever crossed her mind. Would she find the courage to unveil her truth in the face of potential rejection, to redefine what victory truly meant? As dawn broke, Sarah stood before her unfinished creation. A decision loomed on the horizon, and she knew the moment had come for a revelation that would shape her future. Would she step out into the light, bearing her vulnerability, or would she retreat behind walls of uncertainty yet again? With resolve, she picked up her tools, ready to dive into the depths of her own artistry. But would that journey lead her to the affirmation she sought, or would it unearth new challenges she had yet to imagine? As the sun's rays crept through the window, illuminating the small garage workspace, Sarah found herself standing at a critical juncture. The table loomed unfinished before her, a blank canvas beckoning for her to imbue it with meaning. Today, determination coursed through her veins. She had spent countless hours refining her technique, yet her heart still drummed to the anxious rhythms of self-doubt. Gripping the mallet, she felt its weight in her hands, a tangible symbol of the struggle that had defined her journey thus far. Each tap reverberated with the echoes of past failures and victories woven into her narrative. Today, she would not shy away. She would confront the unforgiving critic within herself that often drowned out her voice. As she meticulously crafted the joints, memories flashed through her mind like scenes from a vivid dream. The years spent feeling overlooked, the countless hours honing her skills while the world outside seemed to rush past. She recalled the faces of family and friends who had cheered her ambition. Yet, beneath those smiles, she sensed their unspoken doubts about her endeavor. What if she fails? The thought often lingered, creeping into her mind like an unexpected gust of wind. Yet today was different. With each swing of the hammer, she pushed back against those lingering doubts, surprising herself with the force of her resolve. Every piece of wood was not just a part of the table, it was a piece of her reclaiming her narrative. She was visibly transforming the emotional weight she had carried into something beautiful. In the late afternoon haze, she leaned back, admiring her progress. Yet a layer of anxiety started to surface again, hammering at the edges of her consciousness. The competition day was approaching rapidly, and the stakes felt higher than ever. She needed to share not just a piece of furniture, but a slice of herself. It was a daunting challenge, verging on terrifying in its depth. But risk held the key to growth, she reminded herself. Taking a deep breath, Sarah decided to articulate her doubts clearly on paper. She grabbed a fresh sheet from her sketchbook. The words flowed, raw and unfiltered.
What if they rejected her? Would the critic see through the layers of wood to recognize the labor of her heart? With each written concern, she felt a sense of release. She was giving words to her fears, tracing them into the shape of understanding rather than dread. This process, this confrontation, felt liberating, an outlet
for the vulnerability she often tried to shield. It was in these honest reflections that she discovered something poignant. She possessed a deeper wisdom than she initially realized. Through late nights and early mornings, she had meticulously honed not just her craftsmanship, but her character. With renewed resolve, Sarah reflected on her expectations for success. It was time to relinquish the compulsion to seek validation from others. Instead, she embraced the notion that art was not merely about perfection, but about authenticity, a profound connection with her audience that could only occur if she laid her soul bare. As the shadows lengthened around her, she stepped back to view her work once more. The table had gradually shifted from an object of competition to a manifestation of her journey, flawed yet glorious, just like her path to this moment. The resonance she had craved began to hum at the surface, her confidence blossoming like a flower in the sun. But she felt it again, a leftover hesitation lingering at the edges, whispering shadows from discouraged memories. The final push remained. She needed to dive even deeper. Leaning back against the workbench, she contemplated what lay ahead. How could she transform this piece, this moment, into something else, something powerful enough to silence her inner critic and resonate with others? As she picked up her brush to apply the finishing touches, she knew the real challenge, the true competition, was yet to come. Would she be able to infuse the final design with her newfound understanding, or would she lose her nerve at the last moment? As the first stroke of paint met the wood, anticipation coiled tightly within her, hinting at the significance of what awaited. The brush glided across the wood, each stroke igniting a fresh wave of determination within Sarah. Colors blended seamlessly, a reflection of her multifaceted emotions, each hue a different layer of her identity, revealing shades of vulnerability and strength alike. She approached the table as if it were not merely her creation, but a living embodiment of her journey, her struggles, and her triumphs. Today, she wasn't just painting, she was healing. As she worked, Sarah found herself lost in thought. The gentle hum of the garage, mingled with the scent of paint and wood, wrapped around her like a protective cocoon. Yet within this sanctuary, the voices from her past fought for dominance. The echoes of, "You should get a real job," reverberated through her mind, cloaked in uncertainty and judgment. Would pursuing her passion amount to anything, or was she just setting herself up for disappointment? This self-doubt began to morph into something else, a quiet resolve. She chose to confront the criticism that had followed her for years, scrutinizing her motivations. What drove her to create, to shape something tangible from raw materials? Was it the approval of others, a desperate yearning for validation, or a deeper need for self-expression? Leaning into the discomfort, Sarah realized that the latter was true. Her passion was a necessary outlet. With each layer she applied, an anthem of self-acceptance emerged. She painted not just with color, but with intention. Each hue a declaration that her art was rooted in her truth. It transcended the notion of competition. It became a sacred space for expression and authenticity. The weight of her earlier fears lightened, surrendering to the flow of creativity. But as she approached the final strokes, her confidence wavered. The imminent showcase loomed in her thoughts. Would it really convey her essence? Would the audience recognize the soul she poured into the wood? Her insistent inner critic, persistent yet familiar, echoed in her ear. What if it fails to impress? Standing amidst the transformative landscape of her workspace, she took a moment to pause. For a brief instant, the chaos tangling her heart quieted, replaced by clarity. Success, she realized, had to be redefined. It wasn't about accolades or applause. It was about embracing each moment with authenticity and purpose.
She had thought of her art as confined to an audience's expectations, but it was time to liberate herself from that notion. Determined, Sarah made a choice. She switched to a bolder color, one that startled her. It was vibrant and unapologetic, a direct challenge to her fears. With each stroke of this new color, she infused the table with the unfiltered essence of who she had become during this journey. She poured every question, every confrontation, and every revelation she had experienced into the design. As the final swath of paint dried, anticipation coiled tightly within her again. The unveiling was not just a public display, it was a confrontation with her doubts. Standing back, eyes darting across her work, she felt it, a form of empowerment rising from within. But something was still missing. Beneath her vibrant creation, the uncertainty lingered like a stubborn shadow. What would happen if the world failed to comprehend the depths of her art? What if her bold choices were met with silence rather than applause? The breaths grew deeper as she wrestled with her tangled emotions. Was she prepared to face that reality? Stepping closer to the table one last time, she felt the raw heartbeat of her creation resonate against her palm. With renewed strength, she whispered to herself, "I'll tell my story, no matter what." The thought settled in her chest like a weight and a buoy, equal parts burden and buoyancy. Confidence rippled through her in waves. The art was ready, but would she summon the courage to stand behind it? As Sarah prepared to leave the garage, she couldn't shake the feeling that the greatest challenge lay ahead, not just in the reveal, but in standing resolute against her fears. Would she embody the very authenticity she painted onto the table, or would she retreat into shadows once again? The answer awaited just beyond the doors of her sanctuary. The next morning, Sarah awoke to a lingering tension in her chest.
Reminder of the defining day ahead. The showcase would not only spotlight her art, but it would also unveil a version of herself she hadn't fully embraced yet. She stretched, letting the sunlight filter through her window, illuminating the remnants of paint on her hands. Each smudge felt like a badge of honor, yet doubt clawed dangerously at the edges of her thoughts. She brewed a cup of coffee, each sip awakening her senses and coaxing her into action. The living room felt oddly still, as if time itself paused, waiting for her to make the first move. Glancing toward the table, her heart raced at the memory of the vibrant strokes she had infused into its surface. It was no longer merely wood, it was a testament to her evolution, embracing everything she had learned about herself. But would others see it that way? The morning passed slowly, an unsettling juxtaposition of anticipation and dread. In the grip of her self-scrutiny, she found herself staring at her reflection in the mirror, searching for the courage she needed. Would the woman looking back be strong enough to stand up to the critical eyes that would soon fall upon her work? She thought of the whispers, the unsolicited advice that dismissed her dreams as unrealistic. With a deep breath, she reminded herself of her newfound intentions, of the declaration she had painted in bold color. Authenticity mattered more than approval. As she donned her outfit, a bold yet simple dress mirroring the vibrancy of her table, her resolve strengthened. It wasn't about impressing those who scrutinized her. It was about sharing her narrative, the raw vulnerability behind her art. Arriving at the venue, the atmosphere buzzed with chatter, laughter, and the clinking of glasses, a celebration of creativity in full swing. Sarah felt a wave of anxiety as she stepped through the entrance, a current of self-doubt threatening to drown her. She quickly spotted a group of familiar faces, supportive friends who believed in her talent. Their presence offered a buoy of comfort, yet she still felt the burden of hesitation as she approached her installation. The table stood in stark contrast to the muted decor of the room. Colors erupted from its surface like a symphony of her emotions, waiting to speak. Sarah felt a flutter of fear clutch at her, but she fought it down, convincing herself that she had poured her heart into every brushstroke for a reason. As guests started to gravitate toward her work, Sarah's breath quickened. Discussion sparked around her creation, though she remained an observer, listening intently as they deciphered the meaning behind the colors. Words like brave, authentic, and unique flowed through the air, igniting a flicker of pride deep within her. Perhaps her story was unfolding before her eyes in ways she had never anticipated. But then she caught sight of a figure in the corner, her old mentor, Sam, the one whose voice echoed the loudest when she questioned her decisions. He hadn't believed in the path she had chosen, and now their eyes met across the room. Uncertainty washed over her. Would he see her art as a reflection of self-indulgence, or worse, a failure? Panic bubbled inside as he approached, curiosity etched on his face. Would she retreat into the familiar grip of anxiety, or could she engage him with confidence? The impending confrontation felt surreal, charged with the possibility of rejection, but also the chance for validation. With each step closer, she prepared herself. This was her moment, a declaration of who she had become. Instead of running, she stood firm, grounding herself in the vibrant colors of her creation. The outcome, his reaction, remained uncertain, but the resolve to face him with strength took root. What would she say? How would she choose to express herself in that pivotal moment? The answer loomed closer, and it demanded the ultimate test of her growth and authenticity. Would she tell him her story and reclaim her narrative, or would the fears that had haunted her for years close her in once more? As Sam approached, Sarah's heart pounded in her chest, echoing the tension that filled the air around her. He stood before her, arms crossed, a scrutinizing gaze fixed upon the table that was more than an art piece. It was the embodiment of her personal journey. "Interesting work, Sarah," he began, his tone neutral but his expression unreadable. The compliment felt like an invitation and a challenge. She had expected a passive critique, but what she hoped was for a deeper connection, an acknowledgement of her transformation. "Thank you, Sam," she responded, her voice steadier than she felt. "I wanted to express something real, something that means a lot to me." She gestured toward the swirling, vibrant colors, the bright yellows and deep blues, painstakingly selected to mirror the complexity of her struggles and triumphs. His brow furrowed slightly, and for a moment she feared she'd see the dismissal she anticipated. Instead, he leaned in closer, examining the details. "These layers, they're almost chaotic, but there's beauty in that chaos. It's different from what I expected." Sarah felt the corners of her mouth turn up slightly. Perhaps he was opening a window for dialogue. That's exactly it. Life is chaotic, isn't it? We keep trying to fit into neat boxes when there's so much more beneath the surface. Sam's eyes narrowed slightly, as if weighing her words. "You're right, but some might argue that art should be polished, refined." Her heart sank momentarily at the hint of critique. But isn't it more important to be honest? I didn't want sanitized brushstrokes. I wanted to reveal the messy parts, to embrace them as part of my story. The vulnerability in her voice seemed to resonate with him. He shifted, an acknowledgement broaching his stern demeanor. "I can see that. It's a risk. Stepping into raw authenticity can alienate the audience." "Maybe," she countered, "but it can also invite genuine connection. My work isn't for everyone, and I accepted that." His expression softened, the rigid lines of skepticism fading slightly. "You've matured, Sarah. It sounds like you're finally owning your narrative." Her breath caught in gratitude, the weight she had long carried feeling momentarily lighter. "I couldn't keep letting other people's opinions define my worth. I had to challenge the fears that held me back." "And how did you do that?" Sam pressed, genuinely curious now. "By embracing my flaws and realizing that vulnerability is a strength, not a weakness," she revealed, each word imbued with newfound confidence. For the first time, I'm creating for myself, not for validation or acceptance. It's liberating." He stood silent for a moment, processing her transformation. The air between them pulsed with unspoken recognition of the journey that had both connected and divided them. "What's next for you?" he asked, a challenging glint returning to his eyes. She took a steadying breath, ready to unveil her next leap. "I want to explore more dimensions, moving beyond just painting, perhaps installations or interactive art. I want to invite others into my world, to challenge their perceptions through immersive experiences." Sam raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "That's ambitious, but push those boundaries and you risk stepping into even more chaos." "That's exactly where growth happens, isn't it?" For the first time, Sam smiled. It felt like a validation, an acknowledgement of her evolution rather than a denial of her worth. "I'll be watching closely," he said, nodding. As he turned to walk away, Sarah felt a wave of clarity wash over her. This wasn't just reconciling with her past. It marked the beginning of a profound journey, one where she would define the terms of her success. Yet as her friends drew nearer, their laughter a backdrop to her thoughts, Sarah couldn't shake the lingering doubts. What if stepping into this next phase of her career brought more criticism? What decisions would she have to make when faced with uncomfortable truths again? The thrill of her artistic journey loomed on the horizon, sparkling with promise, but shadowed by uncertainties yet to unfold. Would she truly embrace all facets of fearlessness, or would the past grip her once more? Taking a moment to center herself, she confronted this question. Was she ready to boldly leap into her next adventure? And as she mulled over her future, the realization settled in. This was only the beginning of a much grander narrative. The days stretched before Sarah like an expansive canvas, a space yet to be filled with new choices and untold stories. The conversation with Sam lingered in her mind, a mixture of excitement and a nagging anxiety that reminded her of the uncertainty in her artistic journey. Each step toward her new goals felt both thrilling and burdensome, as if they were intertwined with the weight of expectations, both her own and those of the world around her. Determined to avoid the stifling nature of perfectionism, she set out to research installation art. She immersed herself in the works of artists who had taken risks, those whose pieces had evoked visceral reactions. As she read, she felt an electric pull, a sense of belonging to a community that spoke her language, a community that celebrated imperfection and chaos. This wasn't merely about creating art. It was about inviting others into the narrative of her life, exposing the struggles that had shaped her. One afternoon, while scrolling through an online forum for emerging artists, she stumbled upon a competition for experimental works. The theme was transformation, an opportunity to showcase her journey through a medium she had yet to fully explore. Adrenaline surged as she signed up, yet a visceral pang of doubt gnawed at her. Would her new form of expression resonate? Could she succeed in a realm where she still felt like a novice? Evening turned to night as she wrestled with these thoughts, pacing her small studio filled with half-finished projects and scattered sketches. With each step, she questioned her capabilities. Was she merely trying to mimic the success of others? Or was she equipped to carve out her own path in this unfamiliar territory? To channel her uncertainty, she decided to create a piece for the competition that echoed her personal narrative. She envisioned an installation that would invite viewers into her chaotic world, visually and experientially. Fragments of her paintings lined the walls alongside mirrors that reflected the audience, creating an interactive space where they could confront their own stories amidst her own. It was a bold statement, and it terrified her. In the quiet that enveloped the room, Sarah felt a stirring, an alignment between her vision and her values. This installation could be the bridge to a deeper connection, not just with the art community, but with individuals searching for authenticity. Her past hardships became the palette from which she would paint this new experience, breathing life into the raw emotions she'd previously hidden. As she began sketching designs, the pulses of anxiety shifted to exhilaration. Each line brought clarity. Each decision transformed fear into empowerment. She was no longer just Sarah the painter. She was becoming Sarah the storyteller, weaving her complexities into something tangible, something raw and real. But then doubt crept back, darker and louder. What if her message was lost in translation? What if people didn't connect, if they criticized instead of celebrated? The fear felt like an unwelcome visitor, a reminder of past insecurities. Yet this time, instead of retreating, she chose to confront the fear. She monitored her thoughts, asking herself what it meant to embrace discomfort and vulnerability. As she continued to design the installation, she felt the pivotal shift within her, an awakening. She resolved to let the installation reflect her truth, no matter how chaotic, no matter the potential for rejection. Staring into the mirror, she faced her own reflection, a canvas of experiences and emotions, ready to tackle something new. With the competition deadline looming, each day became a race against both time and self-doubt. It was thrilling and overwhelming. She craved validation, yet longed for independence. Would she dare to express vulnerabilities so publicly, risking sentiments she still felt were raw? As she laid down her intentions, the urgency of her choice crystallized. She needed this, needed to break free of the chains that had held her creative spirit captive. This was only the beginning, a pivotal moment that would either propel her forward into a world of possibility or leave her bound by fear. She stepped back from her canvas and looked around, feeling braver with each passing moment. Whatever came next, she was ready to face it head-on. And then came the thought that made her heart race. What if this installation could change her life, not just her art? Now, all she had to do was start. As the day of the competition dawned, Sarah awakened renewed with purpose. This was not merely a showcase, it was a culmination of her journey, evident in every brushstroke and fragmented mirror. She had taken her fears and transformed them into a vibrant manifestation of her struggles and triumphs, poised to captivate those who would step into her world. Weeks of honing her vision translated into an immersive experience, one that challenged visitors to confront their own narratives while reflecting on hers. The installation, entitled Reflections of Resilience, merged her storytelling with artistry. Vibrant colors twisted alongside raw edges, creating a sensory experience foaming with emotion. No longer just an artist, Sarah was a conduit, channeling her transformation into a space of shared vulnerability. As she walked into the venue on competition day, anxiety and exhilaration throbbed in equal measure. Artworks filled the gallery like threads in a vast tapestry, each whispering the individual stories behind them. But Sarah's heart thrummed for one thing. Would they understand the spirit coursing through her installation? Her friends surrounded her, buoying her with well-intended encouragement, yet the presence of her rival loomed large. Could he resist belittling her endeavor as before? She shook off the intrusive thoughts, preparing to speak passionately about her work. This time she would stand resolute against judgment. As the audience began to trickle through, murmurs ignited the air. They stopped, captivated by the colors and mirrors that told a story, a path of triumph through turmoil. Sarah ignited every nerve of her body, inviting viewers in, watching them move through the space, grappling with their reflections, both literal and metaphorical. She felt the weight of her past fade like dust in a sunbeam as she engaged with each visitor. "Can you see yourself within this chaos?" she asked, anticipation swirling in her chest with each response. The room came alive with laughter, acknowledgement of vulnerability, and recognition, the kind she had long yearned for. "This is beautiful. It's like looking into my own fears," a guest shared,
and Sarah felt the validation ripple through her. But there he was, the rival craftsman, slipping through crowds, watching from the shadows. A cold flicker of doubt threatened to seep through her confidence like ink
On a canvas, would he dismiss her work? Or worse, ridicule it for its fervent insistence on authenticity? The nerves surged again, but they did not overpower her. She had come too far to surrender to fear. "Can I help with your installation?" someone asked her, a newcomer, eager to add their voice to the vibrant tapestry she created. She accepted, realizing that creating art doesn't always revolve around the solitary struggle to impress. It also exists in cultivating connections. Finally, during the day's culmination, the judges approached. They asked her about her journey, and she poured everything into her words. She spoke about the countless nights spent in the garage, the ridicule, her father's legacy, and her determination to defy expectations. When the results were revealed, Sarah's heart raced as the audience anticipated. And the winner is Sarah Thompson for Reflections of Resilience. The applause burst like fireworks, a cathartic release that enveloped her. In that moment, a new mantle settled upon her shoulders. This recognition was not about validation, it affirmed her transformation. She had reclaimed her narrative and defined success on her terms. The shadows of doubt dissipated, and the echo of self-discovery swelled in her chest. She had not only conquered her fears, but had redefined them, morphing their energy into art and connection. As applause rang in her ears, a sense of invincibility washed over her. The path forward flooded with potential. Installation art beckoned as the next phase of her career, limning the contours of hope that shimmered in her mind. No longer shackled by criticism, she was resolved to continue unearthing her voice. The crowd melted away, but not the warmth of their appreciation. The journey was daunting, yet she had emerged victorious. At that defining moment, Sarah made a vow, not just to herself, but to the world. She would invite others into their reflections through her craft, encouraging everyone to embrace their chaos and beauty. Her story would echo beyond walls, carving pathways for shared resilience. As the evening deepened, she clutched the award, feeling the solid weight in her hands. A woman shouldn't be in that space, they had said. Instead, there she stood, undeniably proud in that space, living proof that every doubt could fuel creativity, shaping one's path toward empowerment. This victory was just the beginning. She had learned the importance of her art, forging it as an instrument of healing, a testament to authenticity and a beacon for others. Now was the moment to step boldly into her future, for Sarah was not just an artist anymore. She was a champion for courage, creativity, and resilience. Prepare to carry your stories forward. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support empowers. Comment below your reactions and theories about this incredible conclusion, because every voice matters. And don't wait another second. Share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to see this journey of triumph.